The Chicago Bulls get a win over the Toronto Raptors. We're going to break down that game a little bit, but more importantly, we're going to talk about and ask the question, is it time for the Chicago Bulls to build around Coby White? We're going to talk about the positives and negatives of the prospect of doing that. We're also going to talk about just how inactive AK and Eversley have been since taking over the Chicago Bulls. All that plus a little bit of the mailbag right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the content for today, guys. And the Bulls get a win over the Toronto Raptors, and this was a fun game to watch. Now, I know I said that over in the live post-game show. Definitely go and check that out, guys, if you want to see that. But it was a fun game to watch. Is that the competition of the back and forth and just really seeing two teams battle it out and just give up their effort. It was really good to see, and I got to give credit to the Toronto Raptors and how they were able to perform in that game, considering a lot of those pieces have not been on the team very long, and Bruce Brown really stepping up big time for that team, making an impact over the course of the game. When you look at the Chicago Bulls, DeMar DeRozan with 24 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. Nikola Vucevic with 24 points, 14 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals. One of the most complete games Nikola Vucevic has played since he's come back from injury. And then Coby White, 23 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, going 10 of 19 from the field, stepping up a lot in the second half of the game as well when Zach LaVine was out. And P. Will with 12 points in 23 minutes. Zach LaVine goes down with injury in the third quarter. He eventually comes back, but he does miss out the last 7 minutes of the game. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then contributions off the bench. I already talked about Patrick Williams, but also Ayo Dosunmu playing 22 minutes, especially a lot of that coming when Zach LaVine was down. He scores 10 points. Zach does score 8 points in his minutes on the court overall. Drum, only 10 minutes for Andre Drummond. That's a story for another day. But this team closed out a game strong, going on a 9-2 run to seal the deal and seal this victory. And listen, the Toronto Raptors, to their credit, like I said, they did not give up. They battled defensively, offensively. Scotty Barnes having a big game with 31 points, just really stepping into being the number one player on that team. And it's really good to see just for the basketball standpoint of it. But the Bulls took care of that business. And so often we talked about closing out games, right? And I know I've made a lot about here in the last week or so just how the Bulls really need to start being able to close games stronger. And they did that in this game. When the Toronto Raptors took the lead back, I won't lie, it felt like the type of game that the Bulls eventually lose, right? That they aren't able to come back in. And so we were able to see the Bulls really pull it out and still win. When you look at the second half of this game, Coby White, 5 of 7 from the field, didn't shoot the 3-ball effectively, but 12 points, leading the second half in scoring for the Chicago Bulls. Now, he didn't have a bad first half either, just wasn't the same impact. He did score 11 points in the first half, but going 5 of 12 from the field in that time. So, seeing Coby White step up in those important moments was really big, and the team really rallied together. And one of the things that the Bulls did really well in this game that I got to commend them to is understanding the mismatches. We have not always been a team that's done that, and there's been several times where Vooch has mismatches of size-wise, and the Bulls just can't get him the ball. It was a game in which the Bulls absolutely realized the size disadvantage that the Toronto Raptors were at, and we went down to it. Like, Vooch feasted every time there was a small lineup on it, and the Bulls scored a season-high 74 points in the paint. And that's just what it is. And so it was really good to see. The only time that we really didn't, get Vooch the ball was in the second quarter where Vooch had some mismatches and we really didn't get the ball to him at the rate that I would have liked to see the Bulls get it to him. But other than that, listen, the Bulls played a really solid overall team brand of basketball in this game against the Toronto Raptors, a team that we've always matched up interestingly enough with. So, the Bulls have now, I think they're 2-1 in their game so far against the Toronto Raptors. We got one more, so at least we're going to finish even in that. And the Bulls, like I said, they are taking care of the teams that they should beat. And that is one of the steps that this Bulls team needs to take. We now still have a 1.5 game advantage over the Atlanta Hawks, who are now the 10th seed. The Brooklyn Nets are falling out of the play-in tournament as well. And we are a 3-game disadvantage against the Orlando Magic and 5 games behind the Indiana Pacers for that number 7 seed. The Pacers are probably definitely still going to start winning more games and push that out. Be interesting to see what happens between them and the Miami Heat. But the Bulls don't play another game until Saturday, in which they have the Memphis Grizzlies on their dockets. And, the Grizzlies are dealing with their own injury issues and things like that. So hopefully the Bulls are able to come in, give that same level of effort. We'll see what happens with Zach LaVine. And then it starts getting a little tougher for the Bulls. Now, I know January we have the fourth easiest schedule remaining in the NBA. That always is changing and things like that. But then we got Phoenix next week on Monday, the Lakers next week on Thursday, and those are two games that I can't wait to see how the Bulls perform and compete in those games because those are going to be tough. Those are going to be tough, and it's a late tip-off for that Los Angeles Lakers game as well. That game doesn't tip off till 9:30 Chicago time, 10:30 Eastern. So dig in, fellas. That's going to be and ladies, that's going to be a very late post-game show, but you guys know I'm going to bring you that content regardless. And then we got Portland to round out next week on Sunday. So, we'll see how it ends up competing and how the Bulls end up, fighting over that stretch. But the Bulls have 9 games remaining now until the trade deadline. 9 games. And I was kind of surprised to say to when I found out and realized and did the numbers and realized we only got 9 games left until the time. This team could look drastically different by the trade deadline. And we're going to talk about the chances of that a little bit here later in the show. But just watch over these next 9 games because this may be the last time you see some of these guys in the Chicago Bulls uniform if AK and Eversley decide to get active. But to get back on the game, man, like I said, the way that Coby White has been playing, especially how he finished this game strong, and it's not just the scoring. I know we talk a lot about scoring because that's that tangible thing, the easy thing for everybody to kind of understand how a player impacts the game. But Coby White's growth and the way that he closed this game and, breaking down the defenses, his 3-ball was not falling at all for real this game. I think he went 1 of 5 from the 3-point range in this game. But the way that he was getting to the rim, using his speed to get to the lane, absorbing contact, getting to the free throw line 3 times. If you looked at the game and saw he should have got to the free throw line another 2 or 3 times. Refs be tripping and not calling. He's not getting those star level calls quite yet. But just seeing that growth and that recognition and him being a leader, being vocal and things like that has now led a lot of Bulls fans to ask, is Coby White the player that we should build around going forward, regardless of what the Bulls do with the roster? Now, there's some positives and negatives in that, right? The positives when you look at it, Coby White stepping up in every aspect of the game, drawing charges, stepping up defensively, giving more effort there. His basketball IQ has risen. How he's moving the ball around, his playmaking, ball handling, all those things really getting better for Coby White over the last few years. And then when you look at him turning into a 3-level scorer. Now, I'm not going to say he's a 3-level scorer yet, but he's turning into that. We're seeing Coby White understand how to break it down in defense and get to a mid-range and use that step back that he's always been dangerous with in the mid-range to create that extra separation. I also think sometimes people forget that Coby White is technically a big point guard at being almost 6'6" with a 6'6" wingspan, 6'6", 6'7" wingspan. So, he's technically has that positional size, and we don't always recognize it. He's a little bit slight of frame at times, but Kobe's added a lot of muscle over the time of him being in the NBA. So you got to look at that. He's a willing passer. He's developing into a leader. And as the Bulls move forward into this next phase of the roster, if changes do come, you got to ask yourself, that is Coby the best option to build your team around as you're going forward? And then when you look at some of the negatives around doing that, right? Would we be doing the same thing we did with Zach LaVine, right? And that's not just to knock Zach or Coby White. I think we've all acknowledged at this point that Zach was miscast as a number 1, and it set the team back. Now, he was the best thing that they had, so you have to push forward with what you have, right? And the Bulls didn't make any moves. They didn't draft anybody that turned into a star. But would they be making some of those same mistakes? Yes, Coby is turning into all the things that I mentioned, but he hasn't quite ascended to that level of being able to be looked at as a superstar yet. And so if you start building around just him, because you wind up in the same spot where the team that you build is good enough to win some games, good enough to make it to the playoffs, but are they going to be able to have the type of postseason success that you would want and that we deserve as a fan base, right? So I'm of 2 minds for it, and it's not because of Coby's level of play. I think that the Bulls are fine right now. Coby White offers the most versatile and the best weapon and piece to build this team around because his skill set is a versatile skill set in which it's easy to build a team around that, right? You get some defenders, get some other players that can stretch the floor, maybe even somebody, agile big who can rebound and block shots, right? That could really help Coby White's game and build around in a team that's built around Coby White. But then you also have to look at some of the limitations there, and you still need a player. I think even with the way that Coby White's showing that he's playing here over this season, you're still going to need a player just as good, if not better than what Coby White has looked at so far, if you really want to be a team that can make some true noise in the playoffs. But Coby White is just, you want to reward the growth that Coby White has had in just what he's done, right? And we've talked about and asked, let's get Coby White some more opportunities in fourth quarters. They did that last night. Let's allow him to be the player that have the ball in his hands to make decisions. Doesn't always mean it's going to come down to him scoring, but for him to decide where we're going to go with that as the point guard, yes. And another positive I didn't list as well is that as long as Billy Donovan is the head coach of the Chicago Bulls, having a point guard playing at a high level is what makes his system hum. It's what makes the system that Billy Donovan has work. And so building around a player that has the skill set of Coby White, it really makes sense in those type of areas as well. So, looking at that. And so I think also with Coby White's ability to rebound, start the fast break, get out on the fast break, how much more aggressive we're seeing Coby White be in those moments, it makes sense for Coby White to be that focal point of the Chicago Bulls going forward right now. And I think that is a smart concept and a smart way to build out your team. That does not mean that you still need to draft well, you still need to develop, you still want to hope to hit on a draft pick that really turns into a star level player. And then pairing that with what Coby White has done, who Coby's about to be 24 in about a month, right? His birthday's February 26th. Shout out to Coby White, about to be 24, but he still has enough room to grow as well as you're maybe having another young player to grow and develop with him. So, what the Bulls do in this year's draft is going to be important. Can they find a diamond in a rough in what's, talked about as being a weaker draft? Maybe they can, right? But Coby White, I think, has earned earned it to be the centerpiece right now of the Chicago Bulls. I think you look at it. That doesn't mean that DeMar isn't still going to have opportunities to get his as long as he's on this team. He will and he should. Despite some DeMar DeRozan haters, right? DeMar DeRozan still offers something that a lot of the other Bulls players don't, and that's an ability to get to the free throw line and extend your offense when your offense is going through a drought. And that's going to happen to every team, and it happens to the Chicago Bulls. And so, I think when you want to trust your developing point guard, that's what you want to do. That's how you build those point guard skills. That's how you build a killer. And hopefully that continues. But I really do think we're getting to that point of it's time. It's just time to build around Coby White. It's time to make him the centerpiece of this team and let everybody else play off him. And he's going to make some mistakes. He's going to fail sometimes, like we saw in the fourth quarter of a different game, right? There's going to be times where Coby White doesn't go. He's a streaky player, and I know I've seen some of you guys say, well, you can't really. A streaky player can never be some. A lot of players are still streaky in the NBA, but I think with where the Bulls currently sit at, right? And it's not like you can just go off and pull a star player off a shelf and then boom, you got it. Yeah, Coby's streaky. Coby still has his times and opportunity and chances where he just can't shoot. But what we're seeing Coby White turn into is a player that when he's not shooting is still getting other players the ball. It's still breaking down the defense and getting to the rim. It's starting to get to the free throw line at a higher rate than what we've ever seen Coby White do as a starter. And so as that's happening, Coby White's growing in that aspect of his game, getting to the free throw line, a career high three free throws a game so far. Yeah, those aren't amazing numbers, especially when you look at like what somebody like DeMar DeRozan is able to get to the free throw line at. But it's that developing nature of that. And that's what the Bulls need to double down on. That's what they need to bet on in looking at what Coby White can bring to the Chicago Bulls team as they move forward, maybe into a new phase of their roster. And the reason why I say new phase of the roster as we move into the next topic, I want to talk about something interesting. Now, this came from an article from Elias Schuster. Check him out. Great writer there. You guys got to give Elias his credit, man. But how active have the Chicago Bulls really been, or how inactive to say? And this stat blew my mind. The Chicago Bulls have made the fewest amount of trades since the start of the 2022 season. They have made a whopping 1. The only team next closest to them is the New Orleans Pelicans that have made 3 trades. Overall, the average number of trades per team over this span since the start of 2022 have been 8. That's the 8. 8 is the average. The Chicago Bulls have made 1. So when you hear like, are the Bulls going to be buyers and sellers, which was an episode I had, you got to also ask, are they going to be bystanders in that? Like, and that is why you see, like when you see Bulls fans have so much doubt around if this team is going to make a move, right? How many times have you seen in the comments, oh, this team's not going to do nothing. We already know they're not going to make a move. Look at what they did. Yes, they made the move for Nikola Vucevic, and they get credit for that. They made that trade where a lot of people didn't think they were going to make a trade at the trade deadline. But what this team has done more times than not is a big, fat amount of inactiveness at the trade deadline, and it's been repeated, right? It's been something that has been there consistently. And you got to ask yourself, why? What is this team? And I get it. I know that a team initially came together that first year. You're not going to make a big move then. Okay, then I'll give you that. But then why? We've seen this team continue to struggle. We've seen this team know things that they've needed, and this team just has not been aggressive. And that's why when, I talk about, hey, this Bulls team could be more aggressive, we hear that they're willing to use Lonzo Ball's contract, and that's met with pessimism from a large part of the Chicago Bulls fan base. This stat brings it all together. You've made one trade since one trade, while every other team around the NBA on average has made eight moves. And you got a front office that has seen a team struggle and has literally been inactive. And then when you even look at signings, most of the Bulls signings and transactions have been 10-day or two-way contracts. The Bulls, compared to the rest of their team, especially the rest of the Eastern Conference, is just sitting on their hands waiting for something magical to happen, and it's crazy. The one trade that the Bulls made as well was the trade to get Julian Phillips, by the way, since the start of the 2022 season. We are 2 years. 2 years we've made one meaningful trade, and that meaningful trade was trading for Julian Phillips to draft him in the second round at a time where the Bulls had no picks in that draft.